this, I want to talk a little bit about a story of work that we did with Bechtel. And I'll tell this story. Some of you may have seen the president, Andy Gregg, of Bechtel, present this in years past. He speaks quite frequently about this work even now. And he took on this role as president of the business unit, and he called us and said, I need help. I need help because we've got some issues. We've got a lot of bad deals that we're working with. So the salespeople sold projects that were bad for business. They were going to be tough to be profitable. They had short turnarounds. They really didn't have the leeway that they needed to be an effective project. They had poor performance on their projects, low morale, low energy, lack of focus. Come in and help us. We started working with the leadership team on 4 different activities. The first one was working directly with Andy in executive coaching and helping him see the value of behavioral science and how he leads his organization, how he works with his team. The other was in coaching the leadership team, his direct reports, on how they ran the organization. We also work with each project team within that organization to help them understand how they could apply some behavioral tools and skills to better running their projects. And then finally, we worked with a cross-functional group. And so in the Bechtel community, they're the largest construction and engineering company in the world. And they're known for highly complex, dirty, middle of nowhere, big projects that take a lot of work and effort to pull off. So this cross-functional coaching was working with Bechtel leaders, the client leader who hired them, and often other contract leaders, because there were other contract teams also working with them in the project scenario. So pulling those folks together and getting some common ground and some cooperative behaviors happening across them. So that sounds lovely, right? That sounds great. 4 different work streams. Well, what were the results? What we saw is after 5 years, the senior team was rolling, in the sense the senior team was functioning much more effectively. They had a very focused effort where before they were not focused. They were able to focus what they were working on. Andy said they have no more dogs. No more dogs meant they didn't have those projects that they were just hoping to minimize the damage on. Get out and as short, as best they could in the time frame they could with the least amount of leakage of profits as they could. Those are dogs. Those are the projects nobody wants. You just got to get done because you're committed to do it. They got rid of those. They also improved safety 16 times. And they improved profitability 5 times. So they had some hard numbers, and they also had some soft, anecdotal, behavioral data that said we're moving in the right direction. And talking to them since, they've continued that. So it's been another 3 to 4 years since we last took this snapshot, and they would tell you that they're continuing. I don't have the actual data to know that the results are still there, but the behaviors are there. There's a comment that Andy made that I think is so powerful, and as a community, if we can collect these and share these, I think it will help us. He said, any executive going through this kind of significant change has to have a behavior analyst at his side. That's pretty powerful. Pretty powerful, but after those 5 years, Andy got it. He saw what the value was that the science brought to him across both working within the business units and across the functions. So what our dilemma as practitioners of behavioral science, I think, is to take a look and understand what companies are asking from us. And often what I see in my experience is they're asking for improvement in safety. Come help us improve the safety metric. It's usually a specific safety metric. Come help us improve quality of workmanship or production numbers or employee morale. We want to improve our engagement scores or our morale scores. And so if we can, using our unique view from behavior analysis, understand what that need is and look to be able to convert it into what the true need is. A lot of times with that request for helping with a particular business result, what we see is that the leader's really vertically thinking through the problem. So come help me improve production. We need to improve productivity numbers. I want, the oil sands, for example, we want more barrels down the pipeline. That's production and that's bottom line profitability. More barrels down the pipeline. And the way to do that, the easiest way to do that for me as a leader is to work within my business unit. If I can get these guys working more efficiently, smarter, faster, more safely, whatever it is, keep the equipment more reliable, that's going to impact barrels down the pipeline. What they often may be overlooking is the horizontal view, right? Of overall, if they really want that bottom line result, what are the critical behaviors throughout the process across the functions that they need to engage in and that other people need to engage in order to really deliver more barrels down the pipeline. When we talk with leaders about that cross-functional opportunity, we often hear three very common approaches. And this may sound familiar to you guys. So as we talk and we say, hey, have you talked with your peers in other business units, other functions? How do you guys really make sure that you're getting more barrels down the pipeline or more widgets out the door? The executives say, well, because it's on their scorecard. It's on their scorecard, and their bonus is tied to their scorecard at the end of the year. And don't worry, we look at the scorecard on a monthly basis and we ask them if they made it or not and why not. So the executive viewpoint is often very directive. Deliver on results, you gave them that commitment, they're big boys and girls, they'll figure it out. HR, when we go to talk to HR, who typically has some sort of leadership program in place, we hear that they can provide training to leaders. Crucial conversations is often one that comes up with clients that we work with, handling difficult situations, intervening, other sorts of social skills and interaction skills that HR can provide, which can be really helpful if it's a competence or a skill issue. So that can be very helpful. The challenge is it often is just the antecedent. So what we find that we can pull from the HR community is an antecedent-based solution. And then finally, there's a third solution that often comes from the organization, which is a special team. All right, if we want to improve reliability for that equipment, we'll pull together a cross-functional team. We'll get the smartest people from every function, we'll pull them together, and they'll solve for that. The good news is, in my experience, they do solve for the reliability of that equipment, that piece of equipment, or the improvement in whatever particular function, particular piece of the business it is. But the challenge, as behavior analysts, that we know is they're missing the root cause. So they solve for that one particular problem, but they're not solving for the root cause, which is the base of the culture. So at the end of the day, they'll get that solved, and then 6 months down the road, maybe sooner in some cases, something else will come up, and they'll say, geez, why is that not working? Why are we having problems with that equipment over there? And they'll pull together another project team, the project team will work it, they'll come up with very specific solutions to solve that problem, and they still haven't solved the root, which is going all the way back to those cross-functional cooperative behaviors. So let me just pause. After lunch, I've been chatting a whole bunch. Give me some feedback. Have you guys seen any of these in action as you've been out with businesses? I've seen some nods. Yeah. Our behavioral approach is different. I think it's very different, and I think we maybe don't shine a light on it as much as we could. I know I don't. And that is, from a behavioral perspective, we're able to look both vertically within the organization, so we can help you with that. We can identify those critical behaviors at every level in the organization to ensure that you've got everything aligned to best deliver on that result. And we can help you really understand cross-functionally what you need to do across that process, where the behavioral impacts are across the process, and how you best set up the consequence systems to be most effective to get that product out the door at the end of the day. The process that we use is a pretty basic 5-step process. I'm sure will look very familiar to many of you. First, identifying the opportunity, assess the behavioral gaps. So even if you're looking cross-functionally, what are the gaps between these functions or between these business units? what behaviors need to change, and then get those parties together to gain alignment and agreement on what the changes need to be and how quickly the changes need to happen. Of course, as good researchers, we have a track progress loop in here so that we can track whether we've really been effective in identifying the right behaviors and whether they're going to have an impact on the results. And then revising and adjusting, because we typically don't get it right 100% of the time. There's always some sort of refinement that we're finding that we're working with the leaders on. Yeah.
I asked for a question earlier.
Yeah.
You caught me. I wasn't ready to ask a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I ask on that?
Please.
You know, somewhere in here, what I don't see in the 5 steps is what behavior exactly has to change. I don't see the behavior. Yep. Is that in there? 5 steps?
No, it's embedded it's in the assess the behavioral gaps. So there would be a set. I'll show you an example in a minute of a set of typical cooperation behaviors. Like this. I'll pay you later.
So you know she prompted me.
I slip a note. Sample. This is just a quick sample, but what we really like to do, you know, some of these are going to be consistent no matter what groups we're working with, what industry we're working with, but we really like to have the teams create them. So the teams create these. Say, if you believe that maintenance and production need to work better together and communicate better and have a better flow of knowledge and information, what should that look like? And what should be happening? So here's a quick example. Behaviors like communicate new criteria at least 1 week in advance of a change. So if you're going to come out with a new rule or regulation, communicate it a week before it's going to start, not the afternoon after you put it out, for example. Did we provide feedback to inspectors on the inspection quality and timeliness? So inspectors go out from maintenance and they inspect equipment. And essentially, they're inspecting how well operators have maintained the equipment. And they provide feedback and they give it to the operators. Do inspectors ever hear any feedback of, hey, you know, you made a comment and I have no idea what you mean by slow down the lube leak. Like, what do you want me to do there? Or help me understand why you rated it this way. Or help me understand what this rating says. So a feedback loop. Did we deliver equipment when committed? That's a big one if you're trying to get equipment fixed on time quickly so you can keep production going. So these are just sample behaviors, but what we do with these is, you'll see how they're written. Did we, were you, did we. They're written in a way, these are from maintenance to production saying, production, these are the 7 things we committed to you on. How did we do last month? Give us some feedback. And feedback that works pretty well is a simple red, yellow, green. This company uses red, yellow, green on all their scorecards. At the end of the month, they're very comfortable with green is good, red is bad, yellow means we need to talk. So we use that same shortcut. So you can see it's a simple shortcut. Red, yellow, green, how did we do? And we do it on a monthly basis. So for the last month, how did we do? Oh, number 2, did we provide feedback to inspectors? That's red. How come? What's happening? And the ones that are yellow, how come? What do we need to do differently? Well, some people are really good at that, but it's really spotty. It depends on what crew's on shift, or it depends on what leader's there. Or you're really good on the west side of the plant, but on the east side, nothing. And we're not seeing any of this. So it's an opportunity to get those leaders who said that they were going to do things differently to talk about whether they're really doing it or not. How we do that is we pull together a commitments and expectations matrix, essentially. And don't worry about the bullets. The bullets are all behaviors. Okay, so these are all behaviors that are committed. And this is production to production. So we found it actually helpful if you are, for example, if you have multiple units within the production group, so the mine that feeds the extraction plant that feeds the refinery. Those 3 groups have cooperation behaviors that they need to work together on, and they have expectations of one another. So we put it up here. We said, okay guys, within your production group, what do you guys expect from one another? And rate yourselves on that. And then production, what do you expect from maintenance? And rate maintenance on that. And by the way, in this process is a process to say, maintenance, here's the production expectations. Do you agree with those? And can you commit to those? And if you can't, why not? What do we need to do differently? So we're facilitating a process of gaining agreement on the critical behaviors.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Do you find that I see two of those bullets up there that to me are not necessarily behavioral, have a passion, demonstrate trust?
Yes.
So are there a couple up there that you find that you need to clarify further in order to truly get validated?
Yes, we absolutely do. And this is a point where we've kind of walked that line between what we know we really need to do from a behavioral perspective to what the client has the palate to do. And so this is usually a one day, we pull those leaders together in a room, lock them in a room for one day. We want them to get this fleshed out. And sometimes we'll end up with have a passion, demonstrate trust. That's always in there somehow. You guys need to trust us. You guys need to give us a heads up. Things like that. And they like it. And we ask maintenance or whatever, we ask the other people, do you know what that means? Yeah, we know what that means. Hey, you guys are good with that. You guys can commit to that? Yeah, absolutely. Fine. Let's walk away. Go for a month. You guys demonstrate trust. You guys give the heads up. You know where this is going. Come back in a month. Let's talk about how we did. And surprise, surprise, the guys who are supposed to demonstrate trust get a red. Why aren't they red? Well, they didn't do anything to demonstrate trust. And they're on the other side of the room going, we did too, we did this, and this. Is that what you expected? No, all I wanted them to do was if their an operator said something bad about us, for them to say trust them. They've got to figure it out. That's all we wanted. Oh, should I put that on there instead? So your point is well taken. A lot of these are not pinpointed at first, and we do that choicefully, knowing that we could spend another hour trying to help them pinpoint, but sometimes it's better to let them learn it. And then it sticks. It usually ends up sticking a little bit better if they've been through that more painful reality process. Yeah.
When you have them check red, yellow, or green, is that for each item in that for that function, or is it like for all the items? I mean, how do you? I can't read the items from here, but
it's overall. It's period performance. So for in the last month. So if we look at this one, expectations from maintenance for production. There's 5 behaviors that they're looking for. So they'll sit down, the production group, or the maintenance group will sit down together and say, how did production do last month on these 5 behaviors? And then what would we rate them? And they'll take some notes. Well, they're getting 3 out of the 5. This one's really the most important. They're doing everything else, but they're not doing that yet. I think they're yellow. They're not green yet.
Okay.
And they'll subjectively rate red, yellow, green, but then when they come, they'll bring that conversation into the larger group. So the maintenance person now will represent that. They'll say, well, so here guys, we rated you yellow, and here's why. Because we're not seeing you provide visible, passionate, continuous commitment. There's another one. Right? And this is so critical to what we do. Yeah. And then that drives a conversation. So all this does, pinpointed or not, subjective color rating or not, it drives the right conversations with the right people in the room.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. Other questions or comments? Yeah.
To arrive at that list, have you found any shortcuts where you could use existing process documentation or anything like that to sort of point you in the right direction and go, oh, these may be the things that I would want to give them feedback on, quality of the outputs in systematic feedback?
Sometimes we'll use role descriptions, and sometimes we'll use process. If it's a new process that they're working with, we'll have them bring in the process document to get the conversation going. But right or wrong, we typically have started with a blank piece of paper. They might have some of the pre-read, bring in what you know about how you work and who you've seen work most effectively with this other group and why. Bring that in. So they'll have their own set of data, but it's blank to begin with. And we do that because we want them to be completely owning the list. We probably would be faster if we had a starter set and we had them react to it, but my experience is if I do that, then I'll lose the ownership for it. Be more precise and more detailed, but it'll take longer to get their buy-in because they get buy-in on trust and other things initially. Other questions, comments? Here's a close-up of one of those boxes. So again, the behaviors might be things like deliver against daily plan, clean up work area before returning equipment to production, escalate situations when equipment is not ready for maintenance. That's a big issue. Production's expected to have the equipment ready at 0800 if that's the time that it needs to be ready. And so the production expectations, on their side, they said, yes, we'll commit to have the equipment ready, but if we don't want your maintenance crew hanging out, eating donuts, waiting for us, and complaining about us. Please escalate that. Call the supervisor and say, where's my equipment? Get somebody to call us immediately. We want you to do that. Resolve issues elevated to daily planning meeting by noon. So if there's an issue that comes up in this situation, in the daily planning meeting, that's at 7:45, they want it resolved by noon. So again, it's a bit of a roll-up of behaviors, and you're talking across a group of behaviors and across a month in this case. But so its accuracy of the feedback might be questionable. We don't ask them to tally or to check or to track daily, but we do ask them to have the right conversations. And then to bring that, be prepared to have those conversations across the groups and talk about what to do differently. And it seems to work pretty effectively. We just finished a year-long process with this, with third-level leaders across 12 business units and 5 maintenance groups. And they really did find at the end of the year that they knew much better about how to communicate with one another and what they needed to do differently to work together. And the good news was by the end of that, they were coming into the monthly meeting and there was no surprises. Production, well, what'd you rate maintenance this month? And maintenance will say, red. We're red, here's why we're red. We've talked about it. Bill and I, we got a plan, which is what we really wanted, right? We really wanted that conversation happening outside of the meeting. So this was just a vehicle to get that base behavior going. Yeah.
Do you ever have people come away negative and not liking a certain group of people because they didn't appreciate the feedback or it wasn't taken well, or you kind of prep them in a way so that everyone does take it well? Because I can see it going the opposite way.
Yeah, a lot of it depends on the prep and then the facilitation. So in the early meetings, I find we spend a lot of time helping them pinpoint and get specific about examples. And so so you're right, sometimes not everybody in the room is going to be happy. And there's always a couple people in the room that go, really, why are we doing this? We're 6 months in, I don't need to do it. I can do my job, I don't need to do this. But for the most part, we find it's helpful to leaders. And the more that we can do by sitting down, for example, with the production leaders when they're doing their pre-discussion. So guys, how are we gonna rate maintenance? What did we see? What did we see them do? What did we hear them do last month? If we're in that room and we're helping them pinpoint before they go talk to maintenance, that's helpful. So that helps it. So at least it's an objective conversation. They have 1 or 2 examples that they can anchor off of, and we can also spend a little bit of time saying, so, you guys said that they did pretty well on most of these behaviors, but one of them, you have 2 examples when they failed for the month. Is that really red? Do you really feel comfortable giving them a red? Would you feel comfortable if they gave you a red? And so there's a little bit of contracting as far as what does red really mean, what does yellow really mean. The other thing is that this process is not tied in any way to their scorecard, bonus, end of the year. Again, right or wrong, right? It's not tied into those consequences. Early on, that works very well because it really is all about the feedback and the consequences that come from getting that feedback. So the accuracy of the feedback is much more powerful than being able to make sure that I hear everyone tell me I'm green sitting in my room with my peers because I don't want to get a red rating. So we try to make it a safe environment for real feedback and dialogue and keep it separate from the performance appraisal process. Just a couple examples. I know we love stories and examples and results, so I wanted to share this with you. I talked a lot about production and manufacturing environment. It can function very effectively in a call center, telecommunications, office environment as well. And we worked with a telecommunications company. Their need when we went in was, we need to increase revenue by $50 million by the end of the year. Let's go. Let's do that. While maintaining staff levels, right? So we need to sell more without adding any staff. And in fact, we'd really like to be able to decrease staff, not hire behind anybody who's leaving through attrition. So initially, they sent us over to the sales department to talk to the sales folks. Makes sense. Sales issue, talk to sales people. What we found out was, what was happening is that sales folks had a culture and a very strong behavioral pattern of selling highly customized packages. So they were selling phone packages to, this was business to business, so they're selling to businesses with pricing structures that were unique to that individual and packaging that was unique. So we'll bundle this together just for you because, I like you and we got a good relationship, don't tell anybody. That was a value add from a sales perspective for those sales folks. Lots of highly reinforcing consequences in that moment. What happened is then customer service would get phone calls that the two unique things that were part of that package never showed up when they came to install everything. Because it's unique, it's customized. And then the invoicing that went out wasn't right, or took a really long time to do because it was customized to that unique client. They had 1,500 different invoice templates. Templates, they called them. 1,500. I think there's a limit at which point it doesn't become a template anymore. but anyway, so you can see the challenges. The challenges were the sales folks were highly reinforced for that behavior. They didn't come in contact with any of the punishing consequences. Right? Who got those? Customer service folks who got yelled at on the phone, and the accounting folks who had to either take all the time to get the invoice right or get the phone call back, why is my invoice wrong? I'm supposed to have, this isn't how much I'm supposed to pay. So we stepped back and worked with all three of them to work to have a more systematic, consistent approach to the sales and then flow that through the process. And a big part of it was asking the customer service and the accounting groups to be sharing those punishing consequences. Once we got a new process in place, share those punishing consequences back with the sales folks. Help them understand the impact of that highly customized order on you and on the organization. So we did other things too, but that was one thing that opened the eyes of the sales folks. They just thought it was the right thing to do. It felt good, seemed to work, increased revenue. Why is it bad? No one ever communicated that back to them. Oil and gas, working specifically in reliability, equipment reliability. And again, without increasing cost, of course. We want to keep our cost per barrel down, right? This work resulted in a 13-to-1 return on investment for the consulting work. In a similar sort of situation, where as we stepped back with the client and looked at what was going on around reliability, it took everyone, the equipment operators who actually did some of the detailed work orders and really checking on the equipment, the maintenance planners who planned what the work looked like for the week and for the day, and then the technicians who actually completed the work. It took all three of those folks working together to identify what the critical behaviors were to get the reliability at the end of the chain. Transportation, railroad, I love this story. This is such a great story. Canadian National Rail, we worked with them for several years, and even though they're called Canadian National Railway, they have more than just trains. They have trucks, tractor trailers, and ships, boats. And they span across Canada and all the way down to the Gulf Coast in the US. And their shipping, they have a lot of shipping actually that happens on the Great Lakes, which I didn't know until I started working with them. And so we were working with the folks who manage the shipping, and they were complaining about what they call demurrage. Demurrage is the cost. It's Alan's nodding. Oh yes. Demurrage is an incredibly expensive cost to you if you have the boat sitting. So if the ship is sitting, waiting to be unloaded or waiting to be loaded, they can acquire demurrage. It's a cost. It's an unnecessary cost if you're running your business effectively, so to speak. That might be a little simplistic way to talk about it, but that was their big issue. And that was a line on their scorecard, demurrage. Seems like a useless cost, it should be zero, and it's in hundreds of thousands of dollars. The trains, the transportation guys, they're worried about keeping their trains running. If you think about trains, how long it takes them to turn around when they pull into a yard, unload some cars, load out new cars, get going again, get fuel. If you figure if there's 6 trains across the system that are down 4 hours a day, that's 24 hours of downtime. That's a whole nother train that CN has to buy from GE at some insane amount of money, $50 million or something, I think it's really insane, in order to keep everything moving. So the more that they can turn those cars, the trains around safely and quickly, then the better off they're running their company. So the transportation guys were looking at things like, you know what? We have some trains that we carry toys to Walmart, and Walmart's very clear about when they want a shipment. They want, they have a window when they want the shipment. We have other trains that carry grain to, grain mills. They don't much care. We tell them it's coming on sometime on Tuesday, and that's good enough for them. So they'll slow down the grain train and speed up the Walmart train in order to make sure that they're delivering customer commitments. Great from a transportation perspective. It looks good on their business unit scorecard, feels good, it's a right decision for that. But the impact on shipping is that the grain train was going to stop by the dock to pick up some containers that are coming off the ship. Oops. So guess what? Shipping's demurrage is going up. Why? Well, it's out of my control. It's because the transportation guys aren't making the right decisions on the trains. And then the intermodal folks, the trucks are fit in there too, because sometimes it comes from the ship to the truck, to the train, back to the truck, to the site or the warehouse or whatever. So this was just another example of helping leaders step out of the existing way that they're running the business, which was very siloed and focused on their results. And they were making great decisions on those results, but they were missing the bigger picture. And the broader picture about what they could really do to impact the company results. Okay. So, what's the behavioral difference? Why do we care? What can we do? I think that we're different in the fact that we identify and address complex, interwoven behaviors necessary for change that other people miss. We've got a unique view in identifying behaviors that other folks don't have. And we can offer that to the business. I think we can also ensure that antecedents and consequences are put in place within and across functions. We know how to do that. We bring process and systems thinking to our work. And we ensure regular reviews of progress in order to keep the consequence systems going, which is another piece that I think normally is often missed. They don't have a behavior analyst on staff for helping with the longer-term consequence systems. So here's the challenge, as I see it. And I'd love feedback on what you guys see as the challenge from your perspective. Maintain an understanding of business and client organizations so that we can help them identify the true need. The more that we understand enough about business, basic business, and then that particular client, the better off we're able to tease out, well, I know you're looking at demurrage, but have you thought about this broader, the broader impacts, the broader results, the end-of-line metric? Understand the critical behaviors that underpin the client needs. Pinpoint in a way that's evergreen. That's the nice way for me to say that we don't always pinpoint to the exact detail when we start It's consulting, John, what are you saying? We need to come up with some good terms?
Yeah.
Evergreen pinpointing. It means it's not pinpointed at the end. It's evergreen. Communicate the true need in a way that shapes the client's thinking. The more that we can communicate, help them identify the true need from what is the facial need or the need on the surface, then the better off they're going to be down the road as they come up with other issues, other needs. And then facilitate the solve for cross-functional cooperation in a way that highlights how the effort impacts results. Because at the end of the day, I have yet to find a for-profit company that I've worked with who, even as much as they will say that they want to improve leadership effectiveness, and they truly do, it better be resulting at the end of the day in some bottom line improvement in results. So ideally, they want to help leaders get better so they get better at their jobs, and so that they're improving the organization. So the more that we can continue to tie these soft, fuzzy things like cross-functional collaboration, behaviors, cross-functional behaviors with bottom line results, then the more they're going to see those connections down the road. Thank you, everybody.